The third verse of the first chapter of the Gospel of John in Greek is παντα the αυτου εγενετο και χωρις αυτου εγενετο ουδε ο γεγονεν. Word for word, we have παντα, which means all things or everything. Then we have the, which is by or through, and αυτου, which is the possessive form of αυτος. And you can see it's very similar to αυτος, but the ending there is different. Instead of omicron sigma, we have omicron epsilon. Now here we have an example of a prepositional phrase that's going to take the possessive. It's going to take the genitive, which is what it's technically called, but just possessive. Instead of having an accusative, as we've seen before with prepositions, we have a possessive. And the αυτου. So this prepositional phrase, which is initiated by the, which here is just the, and if we take the and we set it next to αυτου, we can see that there's two alphas right next to each other. And if you say this together and you sort of smash these words together, you get the αυτου. We almost have a superfluous A, and that's why we have that apostrophe that takes care of that first alpha. It's just because there's unnecessary numbers of alphas there. Whenever you say this, one of those alphas is just going to sort of be gobbled up by the other. So it's the αυτου. The αυτου is thus by him in English. And you can see, even though it's the possessive αυτου, which would literally be his, it's switched to him because it's in a prepositional phrase. The last word in this sentence is egενετο. Eggenetto is a verb, and verbs in Greek are pretty strongly inflected. And this means that whenever you switch from the present tense to the past tense, the verb changes a little bit. So in English, is, the verb is becomes was in the past tense. So that's pretty highly inflected. And the same sort of thing happens in Greek. When we put this into the present tense, we have gινομαι. And gινome means to be born or to happen. Εγενετο, as the past tense form of gινome, is thus happened. Now the words in this verse are more challenging than the words that we had in the other two verses. However, we're going to break down some of these words, and we're going to see that there are in fact cognates with English. So the first word there is παντα. That means all things. If we look at the first three letters of that, P-A-N, we have pan. And in English, we have panoramic. And that means the whole view. We have pantheist. And that means everything is divine. And we have pan-American. And that means all the Americas. So pan, we have this in English as something that means everything. The preposition the, we have in a math word, diameter. And diameter literally means through measure. So you can see the, through, and then meter is measure. The verb εγενετο might seem really unique and different from anything that we have in English, but actually that's not the case. The gamma epsilon ni epsilon in εγενετο, you put that into English, you transliterate that into English, and you have the first four letters of the word Genesis. So εγενετο and Genesis are related. So the English word Genesis comes from the Greek, which means to become or be born. To run through this sentence one more time, παντα, all things, the, by, αυτου, him, εγενετο, happened. All things by him happened. The second sentence in this verse is και χωρις αυτου εγενετο ουδε εν ο γεγονεν. The first word, και, we know that one. That's and. Now the next two words are a prepositional phrase, and it's similar in format to the prepositional phrase we just saw. We have χωρις αυτου, and αυτου again is that αυτος in the possessive, in the genitive, and then the preposition itself is χωρις, and that's from, means apart from or without. So χωρις αυτου. So just like we had the αυτου in our last sentence, which was by him, we now have χωρις αυτου, which is apart from him. They both take that genitive for αυτος. And again we have εγενετο, just like we did in the last sentence. And remember, that means happened. Ουδε is not, and en is one. So not one. Now the next word can be kind of confusing. We've seen the omicron by itself before as the article for a masculine noun like o logos. However, here the omicron by itself is not an article, it's a pronoun. It doesn't mean the, it means what. So omicron as a pronoun is what or which or whichever. And then the last verb that we have here, you can see it is gegonен. It looks similar to egенετο that we just saw, and that's because it's the same verb, it's just a different form of the past tense. And I know this is a lot of grammar, and we're not going to get bogged down in grammar. We're just going to first see these examples. We're going to learn this as we go. The first time we saw this, εγενετο, it was a simple past tense. And now we're seeing γεγονεν, which is the perfect past tense. So you might be wondering, how could there be different forms of the past tense? Well, we have different forms of the past tense in English. Let's look at these two verbs. There's εγενετο, and this is the simple or aorist past tense. And this means happened with a D, happened. And then there's γεγονεν, which is has happened. And the perfect tense takes that has. And this might seem sort of subtle, and it is, but there is a distinction. Notice how the perfect tense, γεγονεν, has an extra yama at the beginning. This is called reduplication, and the perfect tense will basically reduplicate that first consonant, that yama in this case, but you can just see that there's an epsilon at the beginning of the aorist, the simple past tense. Let's review the whole verse. Here's John 1:3 in Greek. Παντα, all things, the, through, αυτου, him, εγενετο, happened, και, and, χωρις, without, αυτου, him, εγενετο, happened, ουδε, not, εν, one, o, what, γεγονεν, has happened. Παντα, the αυτου εγενετο, και χωρις αυτου εγενετο ουδε εν ο γεγονεν. All things by him happened, and without him happened not one thing which has happened.